we go. Welcome back to Living with a Classic. We're in my 1977 Jaguar XJ12, which is broken down in my driveway. We came back, my wife and I, with our daughter, from a really nice drive, and I parked the car outside the house. Everyone went in the house, and after we put my daughter to sleep, I was going to put the car back in its garage. So I went out to try and turn it over. The starter, it kind of half engages. It goes halfway and makes a terrible noise. So there's something wrong with the starter solenoid, or maybe the pinion. I'm not really sure. But I'm really happy it broke down while I was at home and not lots of miles away. I usually go on really long drives in this car, so I was really lucky in that way. But what's not so lucky is that changing a starter on these V12s looks to be a pain. I'll show you in a sec. It's really tight in there. There's a bunch of stuff in the way. Good news is I got a hold of a uprated starter for a late 80s car. It's a 1989 starter. So it's a lot smaller than what was there before and a lot more powerful. So the engine should turn over a lot quicker and it should be easier to get back in. But I still have to get that old, really big starter out. So let me show you what it looks like under the hood, how tight everything is, and how weird the starter sounds now. As you can probably tell, we're not in my workshop. I was unable to get the car in there since it's uphill the last bit. But I managed to get it into my, well, it's sort of barn slash storage unit. It's where I have the S-Type, and there's a friend's car over there. Because it's downhill the last bit here. So I didn't manage to get it all the way in, but it's sort of halfway in here. Which is great because it's been raining a lot the last couple of days, so it's just been drying off here while I went and got a new starter. Actually, this place is going to be fixed up a bit in the future. I'm hoping to be able to pour a new concrete floor in here and to finish off the walls and maybe put some insulation here and make it a really great place to store cars, but that's in the future. So I have the hood up, the car is safely on jack stands, and I'll show you the weird noise it's making. Basically, I think it's engaging half the way and then just sort of not really grinding or something like that. So let's see. As you can see, it almost sounds like a flat battery, but the battery is fully charged and everything, and I checked all the connections. They're all tight. So basically, the starter is bad. On these V12 cars, the starter is right down here. It's on the passenger side if you have a left-hand drive car. And under there is the exhaust manifold. So as you can tell, it's pretty tight down there. This is just an air filter, but it's really close to the frame up here and a bunch of transmission lines. So I'm going to try and crawl in under the car here with the camera. See if I can show how tight it is. So that's the oil pan, and right up there is the starter. According to my trusty workshop manual, I need to first remove the right-hand front exhaust pipe, then I can disconnect the cables on the starter, and then I can get the two bolts out. So let's start by removing the exhaust. I'm going to start by removing those 3 bolts there, and then there are another 4 bolts up there. Now the exhaust is out of the way. It came up pretty easily because I had it out of the car when I was fixing the car for the first time 5 years ago and getting it back on the road. So the studs were new and so were all the nuts. That came out really well. So now there's a lot more space here. And if you can see up there, now we can actually see the starter. So now I'm going to disconnect the main power cable here, up here, and the trigger wire. Okay, so now both those cables are loose. And now I'm going to try and get back there, and there are 2 bolts holding the starter in place. And finally, I got that massive V12 starter out of there, and it was really stuck. When I gave it a bit of a whack to try and get it out, I heard this gear snap back into place. So it was definitely stuck to the flywheel, or the flex plate of the transmission. So that was the problem. Getting it out is not the easiest starter in the world, but it was really tight in there, so I was really unable to film it. But the bottom bolt is just a normal bolt like this. It also holds the ground strap on that side of the engine. The top one, for some reason, is a 12-sided bolt. And no, I didn't do all this damage to the bolt. It was already like that. Fortunately, I don't have a new one, so this one has to go in again. But that was a little bit of a pain getting out. So make sure you have 12-sided sockets if you're going to get these out. But now on to the change of plans. My original plan was to replace this giant starter with a much smaller one. This one, to be precise. It's from a later V12, from 88 onwards, I believe. They made the smaller Magneti Marinelli one instead of the larger Lucas ones. And I got this one used from a friend for a good deal if it worked. However, I just bench tested it with battery, and it doesn't work. There's something wrong with the solenoid, so that one's not going in there. But my friend was nice enough to also give me another starter at the same time, which is one of the older, larger style ones. And I bench tested that one, and that one's working fine. So there's that starter. It looks a little bit different, and the interesting thing I can tell is this one is manufactured in 1986, and this one is manufactured in 1977. The car being a 77, this might be the original starter. It was rebuilt when I bought the car, and I think that's why it's painted black in certain places, because they just painted the whole thing black when they rebuilt it. It was probably never rebuilt right, and that's why it hasn't worked. So I'm hoping that this original one, factory built in 1986, is going to do the trick. And here's what it looks like on the engine. If you look up here at the ring gear, you can see 3 of the teeth are a little bit shiny, and they're kind of a little bit rough right there, so I think that's where it got stuck. So I'm going to try and get a little file in there and just get that all smoothed out so it won't get stuck there again with the new starter. But I think that the damage was caused by the starter getting stuck and not the other way around. Other than that, I'm just going to clean up in here a little bit and then put the other starter back in. And finally, that new starter is in place. Man, that's a really, really heavy starter and an awkward angle to try and get it up through here. But it's in place, and I got the bolts in. I still want to take this one off here and clean this earth point. Even though I cleaned it a couple years ago, just want to make sure that's still good. I cleaned the one here on the back already and the straps. I've put on the main positive terminal up here, but I need to cut this, which is the trigger wire, because it has a spade connector before, but on the new one, it just goes behind the screws, so I'm going to replace it with one of these. This is not the original trigger cable. A previous owner has replaced it. It does bug me a little bit. Haven't been able to find one in the right color that's the right one, but it's the right thickness, and it's a really good cable, so it's not that big of a deal. So that's the next thing. And yes, there was a heat shield that's supposed to go here. I'm going to fit it later. It's coming in the mail, so hopefully it'll arrive in a few days, but I'm just going to continue with everything else and see if the engine turns over again with the new starter. Now there's a new connector on it that will fit. Just going to try and get it up there where I can't even see anything at all. All the electrical connections are connected now and tight. I also cleaned that ground strap up and retightened that. And I've checked all the bolts. But before I put the exhaust back, which is the next thing, I'm going to go up into the engine bay and take the other end of that red trigger wire and basically hot wire the starter with the ignition off and see if the engine turns over well. Just do this a couple times, make sure the starter's not getting stuck and that everything's turning well before I put the exhaust back, because then I won't be able to reach any of these things again. So now I basically just want to try the starter before putting the exhaust back. This is the same red trigger wire that I've connected down there. So I'm just going to disconnect it here from the relay and basically hot wire it to the positive of the battery and see if the engine turns over. That sounds really good. Okay, the battery's a little flat, but that sounded really good. And yes, these V12s do sound like they have zero compression when they're turning over, but that's what they're supposed to sound like. No tendency of sticking at all, so I call that a success. Now I just put the exhaust back and let's see if this thing fires up. Now the exhaust is finally on, so it's just a moment of truth to see if it starts up. It could be a little bit flooded because the cold start injectors ran when the starter was broken, but we'll see. There we go. I'm so happy it's running again. Just gonna clear out the flooded. And that's it for this episode of Living with a Classic. It was just a quick bit of maintenance that had to be done. Sometimes things just break and you gotta replace them quickly, and I didn't have the greatest place to work on it, but at least I was on the roof and I was able to get the job done. If you like this content, there are more videos like it below, and please subscribe to not miss any new updates. I put out new videos every week on working on these great old cars. But until next time, I'm Adam, and this was Living with a Classic. See you soon.